Welcome to Season 4 of the Agile Brand with Greg Kinsbruner, where we discuss business agility through customer experience, employee experience, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Greg Kinsbruner. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at gregkinsbruner.com and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kinsbruner, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. Today we're going to talk about how shift-left testing is able to speed up digital experience and digital transformation initiatives while also improving quality of software and the end-user experience. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Eran Kinsbruner, Chief Evangelist at Perforce. Eran, welcome to the show.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for having me. Super excited to talk to you about that.
Yeah, thanks. Looking forward to talking with you. So why don't we start by, if you give us a little background on yourself as well as your current role at Perforce.
Sure. So I've been in the software development, agile space for over 21 years now. I'm an author of a few books in the DevOps space. And as of today, I am the Chief DevOps Evangelist for Perforce, overseeing mostly the application quality portfolio within Perforce, such as Blazemeter, Perfecto, and the SAST, Static Code Analysis products, Clockwork and QAC.
Wonderful. Well, looking forward to talking about this topic with you. So while some in the audience might be even experiencing it already without using the term, why don't we start with a definition of what we mean by shift-left testing? So can you briefly describe the problem that shift-left testing addresses, as well as what we mean by that term?
I think that when we say Agile and DevOps, what we are trying to actually say, try to deliver value in increments to the customers with high quality. And to do so, we are trying to test as early and as often as possible. And this is where, shifting left, which means doing more testing, more quality validations earlier in the software development lifecycle, which starts in the left, right? When you're setting up the requirements, the user stories, and starting to build your software. If you can accomplish some validations and doing some testing at that stages, and we'll soon talk about what testing needs to happen there, this is what we actually mean by shift left, doing as much validations and testing earlier in the process to enable agile and software delivery at scale, at high velocity, and obviously at high quality.
So as you mentioned, it seems very much in line with an agile approach. So love that, as the name of the show would suggest. Are there different ways of implementing this successfully? And I guess, follow up to that is, what does it look like when an organization does this shift left approach well?
That's a great question, Greg. And when we say shift left, obviously it implies that we need to do a lot of the testing earlier, but to do it earlier, we need to do a lot of automation. Shift left enables agile, and enablers of shift left are obviously automated testing. But when you're starting to dive into different verticals, different market segments, where they sometimes deal with either different requirements, different maturity levels, this is where shift lefts become a bit of a challenge, because to automate as much testing as you want to in the earlier stages requires skill sets, time, proper tools that you would use, and obviously cross-team collaboration. The developers and the test engineers needs to work very close together. They need to have transparency between the requirements set up front, so the testing obviously matches these requirements. So to better implement these kind of methodologies, we are aware of over the past few years, people, when they are referring to agile testing, you can think about, behavior-driven development, test-driven development. These kind of approaches enable this cross-team or multi-persona collaboration that eventually allows the business testers, the test automation engineers, the developers, the product owners, all of these personas are collaborating in front of the same requirements, in front of the same business requirements, and this ensures that they can really build the right software, but also build the right test cases that will test and validate these new requirements.
And so you mentioned automation playing a role, and I know artificial intelligence. It can be a very broad. There's a lot of things that can fall under that umbrella depending on your definition of that. But from your perspective, what role is AI playing in this approach, and what's on the horizon that might bring some further improvements, let's say in the near future?
I love that question, not because it's a great question, but also because my third book was actually around accelerating software quality with AI and machine learning. So
Nice.
it's a spot on question. And I think AI is not playing yet a massive role in advancing agile testing or agile development as well. We do see point solutions throughout the entire DevOps pipeline, from build acceptance testing, from unit testing creation through AI, observability in production. So when you think about software quality can be impacted by many aspects, by many activities driven by AI in the different stages of the software development lifecycle. It's not just AI, in software test automation. AI can actually run through the code and do some automated code analysis, and it also contributes to AI. AI can also examine logs quite fast coming from production and provide you, the either the end user experience, the problems that these end users are experiencing in production, and it's also feeding back to the developers, enhancing your software quality. So AI can obviously, and it's starting to play a critical role in advancing software quality. I think that it's not just a matter of tools, it's a matter of adoption by the different stakeholders within the organizations, which needs to be a bit less skeptical, because I think that, it's a matter of trust. When you are adopting a new technology, a new tool, you need to build the trust throughout the entire level of practitioners, throughout the different organizational departments, to really make an impact. So AI is starting to play this role throughout the pipeline, and I think that when you're looking into the future, in the next 1 to 2 or even 3 years, we're going to see much more tools being plugged into the CI/CD pipeline, enabling this, continuous everything: testing, development, integration, and so forth.
Yeah, and based on that answer, it sounds like it's not AI's benefits are not just about functional testing or functional improvements. It's also about process improvement. Is that safe to say?
Yes, it's exactly that. It's not just about the quality; it's also about the process, making sure that all the different phases within the pipeline are operating properly, are communicating, one with the other. This observability notion, big data analysis, obviously feeds into every aspect of the pipeline.
Let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about benefits of shift left and continuous testing on digital experience initiatives. So, as we know, a primary point of competitive advantage, as well as competition between companies, is customer experience. And digital platforms and channels are where a lot of this competition is occurring. So we also know that a large percentage of digital transformation initiatives fail to meet their objectives, often run over time, over budget. Having a way to increase quality, speed up development, and improve customer experience seems like a good approach. So how can this shift left approach solve for some of these very big and very real issues that enterprises are facing as they go through these digital transformation and these large digital experience initiatives?
That's a great point, and especially after this past year or so with COVID, everyone became digital. So digital winners are the ones that actually survive and are going to lead throughout the way. If you go to all the recent commercials, right, with Capital One and the other enterprise financial organizations, they are no longer calling themselves financial organizations, they're calling themselves technology banks, right?
Yeah.
Because everything is digital, and this is where the cost of failure is so high, and this is also where the competition plays a massive role, which means if you are able to shift left quality to make sure that you are always on top of every aspect, every feature, every code change that your developers are doing within the enterprise is being monitored and carefully examined and tested, you are going to be on top of these challenges of quality in the digital landscape. And by the way, we see day in and day out, you can, as a developer, change nothing. Even you're not doing any code changes in your application, front end or back end, but a new browser version came out, or a new mobile application, sorry, mobile operating system was released, like iOS 15.2, which is just around the corner, and other browser versions which are always being released, which can interrupt or disrupt your quality. So shift left is exactly about staying on top of everything that is happening around you. And these digital apps are not living in any silo. They are really dependent on everything, on the ecosystem, on other applications that are either running on the mobile devices or on the desktop browsers. So this digital awareness for these applications is also a key that needs to be validated continuously throughout the pipeline, so you're not actually being surprised. And to your point, yes, this obviously not just makes a digital winner versus a loser, it actually drives a competitive edge, because if you are able to innovate without disrupting quality, you are at the front of innovation and can get an advantage on your landscape, in your vertical.
Yeah, and to build on that, and I think some things can be inferred by what you were just talking about, but from a customer perspective, how do end users benefit from organizations taking this approach?
The end user, at the end of the day, he cares about only one thing, right? He cares about his own experience while he's doing a bunch of other things, whether it's on his mobile phone or in the browsers. So the application that he's using is just one of many. So he's expecting that everything would play nicely with everything else that is running or working in his background in parallel. So the benefit of the end user at the end of the day is a seamless user experience, as little interruption as possible, and a high performing application. It's not just about functionality of this application on the front end side of the end user, it's also about how quick it can get the value from these applications. Because think about it, right? We are limited, and today with all these kind of tracking systems that comes with the operating systems, they actually give you the amount of time that you're spending on each application, on each platform. So you really have a very short amount of attention per each application, and this is the competition angle as well. So you want to get the most out of the application that you are using in a high performing, high quality manner. And this is why, if you are able to deliver as an application developer, if you are able to deliver high customer experience, obviously the end user will continuously use this application, because he knows that he can get this value in a short amount of time. He's going in, he's going out, he's getting what he was expecting, and moving on to the next activity that he has.
With that, we kind of have I'll call it the trifecta here, which is customer metrics are certainly being measured. We've got fewer bugs later on in the process, so saving time and resources on using continuous development and just process improvements. So efficiency gains, all of which can be measured and move the needle over time, right?
Right.
I think the next component to that, or maybe the last topic we before we wrap up here, is the behavioral part of this, because again, all of those things. I mean, to me, I love talking about process and looking at the data and the analytics, and all of that is really valuable when you put it all together like that. All of this definitely requires some behavioral and some mindset changes as well. So what are your recommendations for organizations that are making this shift and people like their they like doing things the same way, and like repeatability and all that kind of stuff. What's your recommendation for an organization that also kind of needs to win the hearts and minds of their organization as they make this shift?
Many of practitioners have spoken to that, three dimensions of software development, so you can actually deliver quality as expected. And this is, the people, process, technology. To enable shift left, or making sure that shift left everything. By the way, shift left is not just about testing, because also developers want to shift left as much as their activities into the earlier stages of their pipeline. So if you can actually make sure that the people, the practitioners within the organizations, have the proper time, they have the right guidance that they need, and the right user objectives or the product requirements as needed, to match also the tools that they are going to use, which matches their skill set, of course. This is where they become more successful. We have seen over the past, I would say, even decade, many failures, because even where the requirements were clear enough, the technologies that these practitioners were using weren't well suited to what they were trying to accomplish. And this is where, you see, if you read year over year the World Quality Report and the DORA report coming from, Google and other large organizations, you always see, yes, we are trying to shift left, yes, we are trying to do CI/CD, but 50% of our quality activities are only automated. Why? Skill sets, tools that are not matching. So I think when you are able to match the people and processes as well as the technologies that they are using to what they're actually trying to accomplish, and bear in mind that this can fit a specific moment in time, but if you're not calibrating, validating that these three angles, three dimensions continuously fit, because you're innovating, you're marching forwards, you might be changing some architectures within your technology stack. You need to make sure that you are also making these right adjustments to the tool set. So, these practitioners under the tag of people keep using what they need to use from a tools perspective, so they are successful. So my quick answer to this very important question is, make sure as you are adopting shift left that the people that are using technology and the tools also within the processes are well matched.
How do leaders measure success in this? Because I would imagine that at the end of all of this, at the end of this big transformation, there's dramatic results. But how do they measure change within so that they know they're on the right track and they're making incremental progress?
That's a great question, Greg. And I think measuring success needs to start earlier in the requirement phase, which means you need to know where you want to go, so the measurements make sense, but you are enabling yourselves to really be able to measure, because a lot of the times when you're not really setting the right KPIs, the measurements, the performance metrics earlier in the stage, in the process, and you're just starting to measure them later, this is where things are becoming a bit more complicated. So setting up the KPIs earlier in the process obviously is one key for success. And these specific metrics that I would recommend practitioners to focus on, especially in the context of shift left, is automation and fast feedback, and obviously the quality metrics. And if you unfold all of these three categories, automation, how can I automate as much as possible my build acceptance testing? Okay, what gets into Jenkins, into the CI process? How can I maximize the automation of these test cases? And I want to actually see a process or a progress along the time throughout the project. How well am I marching towards this high automation goal or objective that I set to myself? Second, I also want to measure how many disruptions do I have within this pipeline, meaning how many broken builds, how many fail or inconsistent test automation scenarios do I have? Because when I'm failing a lot, and failing not just because I actually have bugs, failing because I'm not properly writing my test cases throughout the pipeline, this is just noise. This is slowing me down and actually hiding escape defects to production, which in my mind is the next metric. How many defects are actually escaping to production is also a critical measure of success. Because let's say I think that I'm doing everything right, I have a high maturity of automation, but my rating in the App Store is 2 stars or 3 stars. Why? Because I have X amount percentage of escape defects, because maybe I'm not really testing what I should be testing. So making sure that I'm focusing on the right hand user experience, on the right platforms that these users are practicing my applications day in and day out. So automation, escape defects no production for quality, broken builds, these kind of things. And obviously the tool set that are being used can be an impact to these metrics, because if the tools aren't matching these objectives, as I mentioned earlier, I won't be able to measure, or I will get really bad results for my measurements.
Eran, thank you so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
I'm trying to be as involved in the community as much as possible. So you can find me obviously on LinkedIn. I am very active on LinkedIn. I have my own blog website on continuoustesting.dev, and I'm also constantly writing on medium.com. So if you search Eran Kinsbruner on Google or on LinkedIn, you will be able to find me. Also on Twitter. So I look forward to engaging with you guys also after this show anytime.
Wonderful. Well, again, I'd like to thank Eran Kinsbruner, Chief Evangelist at Perforce, for joining the show, and definitely recommend check out his writing, check out his books, and particularly if you're tackling these topics, really great stuff there. So thanks again for listening to the Agile World with Greg Kihlstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.theagilebrand.show. To get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, visit my website at gregkihlstrom.com. Until next week, stay agile.